And we have a lot of guests tonight, and the first will be Roberta Cameron. She's from Community Opportunities Group. She's the consultant that we've hired to help us with our plan, and we'll turn the floor over.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I am excited about working with you to develop this plan. It's such an interesting topic, and I'm always thrilled to learn more about it by working with more communities on this. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is to just go around and have introductions. I don't know everyone here, but I'd like to get to know a little bit about you. Given that you have more on your agenda after this and it's a long discussion, I will keep it short and sweet. I often like to have an icebreaker, but I'll keep it short and sweet. And I'd just like to know your name, and if you sit on other committees or are engaged with other organizations or entities in the community, tell me what those are. So starting with you, Jim.
All right, Jim Gallagher. I'm engaged to. No, I'm one of the two remaining charter members of the community preservation. Seeing that Joanne is an employee, I also sit on the. I chair the cable oversight committee. I vice chair the Grafton Housing Authority. What else?
You tell me.
No, that's
All-around
all.
great guy.
Okay.
No. I just said, been around longer than a lot of the rocks here, so.
All right. Thank you.
So I'm Justin Wood. I'm the planning board representative to the CPC. So this is my first year on the planning board, running to my seat to keep going for another year this May. So, and that's the only other board I'm on right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, I'm Sandy Brock, so I'm the representative from the Conservation Commission, so I, in the chair of the Concom, been doing that for, I don't know, almost 10 years now, which scares me, but that's a different thing. As far as the town goes, I'm not on any other boards. I'm very active professionally, but not, and I'm a civil engineer, so that's kind of my background.
All right. Thank you.
John Stevens, I'm the chairman, and I represent the Historical Commission, and I'm on the Library Building, Planning and Building Committee, the Historic District Commission,
John, when did you join this committee?
when it started, whenever that was,
2003.
2003.
All right.
I'm Ken Holberger. I also have been on the committee since, I don't know if it was 2004, 2005, something like that. And I've been the treasurer of the committee for the last 10 or so years. Who remembers? And other than this committee, I am also on the board of directors of the Grafton Land Trust.
All right. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Thomas. I have been on this committee not as long as these guys,
Pretty
but
much.
shortly thereafter.
Pretty much.
Probably 16 years. Yeah. My professional background beforehand, I was a park ranger and a recreation forester, so my interest was always with open space and recreation and that sort of thing. Currently, I am on the select board in town. I am the select board's representative to Affordable Housing Trust. I am on the Open Space and Recreation Planning Master Planning Committee. Goodness, I have so many committees. I'll just stay with that, but I do have a list of committees a mile long, and I'm an at-large member.
Okay.
Yeah, and so am I.
Yeah, we're both at-large.
I think I am too, aren't I?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
an at-large member too.
I'm Paul Scarlett. I've been on this committee for, I think, 12 years now. I think it was 2008. It might have been 2007. It's all a blur now. I also sit on the Historic District Commission, and outside of government bodies, I also am on the board of Apple Tree Arts, which is a local arts and theater arts and music school right here in town.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Before I introduce myself, we're missing Kristen Belanger, who is the Recreation Commission representative. She was the Recreation Commission representative many years ago and then had to step back from that, but has just recently come back as that rep. And Rick Schultz, who is an at-large member, is not here either.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm Joanne Duncan, and I provide administrative help to the committee. I was on the committee for like 13 years. I was one of the first
Yeah,
ones
one of the
with Jim.
charter members.
And left in about 2015 it was I left.
Great, thank you. All right, so a little bit about me. As I don't remember how many of you I was introduced to on your way in. My name is Roberta Cameron. I work with Community Opportunities Group. We are a planning consulting firm. We have been around since 1979. I have not been consulting since 1979, although probably longer than you think. We do a combination of land use planning, regulatory planning, community preservation, all of the program areas, strategic planning in those areas. So we bring decades of experience working with this. And my company also does a lot of work in community development, which means that we sit side by side with staff who spend every day in city and town halls across the state. So having a really deep understanding about how human capacity, both staff and the volunteers who make everything run in towns like this, contribute toward things being able to get done or not get done. So we like to really understand what the capacity is, what the issues are, what the motives are that will enable the planning efforts that we work on to be pragmatic, realistic, to be something that you can use, and that there's utility in the process of developing the plan and working with bringing people together to hash things out together and to collaborate, as there is utility in having a document in the end that is going to have some life to it, that you understand what your next steps are and where to go with it. So that's what my aim is in helping you to prepare this community preservation plan. And I have provided all of you in your packet this introduction document, a two-sided page, and I'll talk a little bit about this. I have at the top of this introduction an outline of what I gather the objectives are for your planning process based on the RFP that we responded to. But I'd like to first get some feedback from you all about what prompted you to request this plan at this juncture in time, and what it is that you see you need to get out of this effort. So,
People want to just
go around the circle.
Well, we just had, we had a presentation that was done by the CPA guy, and I can never remember his name. Stewart.
Yes.
And one of the things that he was very big on was, first of all, how well we had been since we first initiated the CPA here in Grafton, how well we've taken advantage of it. But also a lot of the maybe extraneous work that we were doing, a lot of it was spinning wheels, because we didn't have a plan as far as bringing all of our resources together into a function, if you will. So one of the things that we were looking to do was to make sure that someone could go to our website and could see exactly who we were, what we were doing, and what our intent was, and where our basic plan is in going forward with all of the features that are offered under the Community Preservation Act. So maybe it's really, we've been organizing ever since we passed the CPA here in town, and I think a lot of people have come forward to offer their services and to offer their ideas and their planning and so forth. And what's happened is that I think a lot of us had been duplicating a lot of work that we probably didn't have to do. So
One of the things, if I can jump into, when I when the committee hired me to help, one of the first things that happened was the then town planner, Joe Layden, contacted me and he said that, the plan really needs to be updated. I think I mentioned to you that we had written it ourselves when we first formed, because it's a requirement under the act that you have a plan and that it be updated on an annual basis. The plan was very outdated. I went back and forth with him about why we couldn't do it in-house to save some money. And his experience from Weston, as I had shared with the committee at that time, was that it was much better to go outside and have it done and have it created in such a way that the committee then could update it going forward on an annual basis. And that's what kind of presented that then to the committee, and they signed on to hiring somebody to do it. And we've had many questions, we've had a lot of questions come up within the past couple of years. Because we were one of the first towns to adopt the act, we were kind of learning as we went.
Yeah.
And, Stuart shared that with us when he was out here for the training. Not that we're doing anything wrong, but that there's some other best practices out there now. And
Yeah,
this would help us get to those.
okay.
Anybody else have questions already? I've several. Have you had an opportunity to look at the plan of our plan to even see, that would be, and it's like, I almost don't want you to do that, to say, this is really good, this is like really not so great, in terms of parts of it, if that's helpful at all,
Yeah.
because just so that, is any of that something that we can use in the new plan?
I wish
pieces
that,
of it.
yeah, I wish that I had had the opportunity to get into that the other day when the website was down and I couldn't actually download any of the town's materials. I would have taken a look at it ahead of time, but that will be a
But
first
just
step.
in terms of whether that's because you've done these before.
Yes.
That may be something like, this suited you well for the last 10 years. Let's start with whole cloth. Let's not try to put,
What I would typically do is draw on other plans that you've done recently. So you have a recent housing production plan. The master plan in 2001 is somewhat outdated, but at the same time, it provides a complete picture of the town, and that complete picture is really helpful. We would summarize, you're not getting a 200-page master plan, but really summarize in a few bullet points so that it reflects back to you the context of this is who you are and this is like the context that you're planning in. But you also have your open space and recreation plan that is, I don't recall the date that was prepared.
I
But
don't
that's,
think that
It's still in draft.
Still
but
in
it'll be
draft,
done in
okay.
about a month.
all right, that's right. Sorry, we talked about that the other day. And then the village master plans for North Grafton and South Grafton and Worcester Street. So we'll look at these existing planning documents and see what we can extract from all of those in addition to your prior community preservation plan. So we'll start with those and build on those. And I would most likely use a different format than you would have used in your earlier plan.
okay. Let's see. Part of what you're saying is establish forward-looking priorities, because I think that up until now, we really are, we react to applications. We started off by self-promoting projects because that was the only way we could do it. We knew of projects, and then we learned quickly that we can't manage projects and run the committee.
Yeah.
So they needed to come from the community. So slowly that's switched. But to try to develop priorities, and do we say based on historical dollars spent? Okay, we've spent X here, and 2X here. We need to work on these two, or do we base those on what these other plans are saying? Do we base it on what the applications are? I mean, that's our dilemma.
Yeah.
Is that whatever it is, usually, and it's, especially if it's land, it comes up and it's, you've got to deal with this because it's coming out of 61A. So it's real hard to plan for that.
Yeah.
We don't have a $2 million bank account where we can say, oh, well, we can have a special time meeting and pay for that.
Right.
So you know, because it's a large amount of money, but a small amount of money, it's difficult to have a real long view. But we do know, and I think at every meeting we'll say, are there things that are coming up? Are there things that are coming up? Are you hearing? So at least on the back burner, we know something else may be coming up so that it may be competing for the limited dollars that we might have
Yeah.
for a large project.
Let me ask, do you typically have more funding requests than the funds available every year, or do you have less than the funds
I
available?
don't think we've
requested?
have we ever had a time where we maybe put it to where it was to be funded after July the 1st when the money would be available?
I think there was one time, there was a project that we asked them to come in the fall.
Mill,
Like,
Mill Villages, remember?
right.
Because we had two big ones
We split
coming at
it.
the same time.
Oh, the
It's worked out about even. We've generally had enough money. We've generally had enough money to do what we've been, to fund the grants in front of us. And only rarely have we had to time things.
Okay.
I can't remember us wanting, seeing a proposal that came forward that we were in favor of, that we had to say we can't do it.
Yes, correct. Yeah, me either.
So,
it's always,
Because we've
we'll
bonded
do it
too.
at the next,
Yeah, we've done 3 bond
Cycle.
issues. 2 of them, just slightly above $2 million, or $2 million.
Okay.
The original one was like 500,000.
500,000 for Hassan-Mesa.
Okay.
and also big picture wise, what the towns that you've worked with, how do other towns deal with all of these same issues? You know, are we in the same category? Are we with a lot less money, more money? Are we even on par with them in terms of how they're able to manage their funding and their projects?
Well, I think it varies in the degree of awareness of the availability of CPA funds and the who is looking to use those funds. In some cases, I think that, like you did in the beginning, the CPC is marketing the funding and recruiting people to use the funds. And in other cases, they just open the gate and people are lined up and it's a competitive funding round. So, you could be so lucky as to have so many good projects to be able to have to pick and choose between them. But on the other hand, it's unfortunate when there's something that you'd like to be able to fund that you don't have the funds for. So, you're probably in a comfortable place where it's about even, but maybe if you've been doing recruiting, this plan can help you to prioritize that recruiting so that you can ensure that the right projects are getting into the pipeline. And so part of our process could be identifying who those stakeholders could be, whether they're town entities or entities outside of the town, to identify and lead the projects that you think are the higher priority to do.
And setting policy, and what policies do other towns have? What policies should we have? Because one of the things people want plans, pay for the plan.
Yeah.
And so right at this point, we decided to wait till this plan is done. And then there was a question of, can CPC pay for plans?
Yeah.
And so, is that,
I had a little bit of a talk with Joanne about this the other day. So the Department of Revenue has been narrowing the scope of what CPA can pay for. I think that as more communities have done more projects and they see what's being done, they've been, they've been weighing whether this is in the spirit of Community Preservation Act or projects that are not in the spirit of the Community Preservation Act. So things that communities
well,
did-
where do they get to step in on that? It's a law. The Community Preservation Act has nothing to do with the DOR.
they're interpreting the law. They have the
Oh,
role of
Aren't they wonderful? Shouldn't it be the town that interprets?
the state is interpreting the state's law. The state is
also
telling
public
us how the law is meant to be.
Harumph.
Yeah, we feel the same way. And you're not the only community that is chafing at the rules that are falling into place that didn't used to be there. There are a lot of projects that a lot of communities have done that now are frowned on. Projects that we'd like to be able to do that were, I mean, this was a great source of money to do historic preservation plans for example, and open space recreation planning, preservation of documents. A lot of communities paid for scanners. Scanners are not permitted now. So, you know, there are a lot of things that you're lucky if you came in early and you got to do these things. And because it's not, we can't use CPA for a lot of these things anymore. So I have some familiarity with where some of those boundaries are and can help to define that in your plan.
And
I
think
just don't think anyone is gonna come in here and tell us what we can't do. We'll let you know what we're gonna do.
Oh, Jim.
No, it is.
And he's on his best behavior, okay? And another, which is a still unsettled decision by this committee, is do we have applications once a year or twice a year?
Yes.
So that to help us with making that decision. And I think there are pros and cons for both.
I think that looking at your record of why, because I overheard you talking about asking some proponents to come back in the fall who weren't funded in the spring. So looking at your record of when you've made those decisions and why, and how that has affected your outcome of having funding available for the next year, I think, you know, we'll talk through that question together. I mean, you might be able to provide me with some input on that now, or it's something that I might be able to meet one-on-one with you later, and we can think through that puzzle together.
Okay, because I think different people have different ideas, so I think that we can discuss that at length at another time, but
At
just to
another-
know that
okay.
that's one of the things that we need to hash out.
Okay, so I see us having a working meeting sometime later in the session, to maybe bring some of these questions to the table.
And then I think you brought up that to give us the template, whatever it is that we need to be able to self-update every year. So that's part of our annual review in June or whenever we do it, when the committee reforms, to say, okay, it's time to update or at least review it, and then have on the document, you know, that it was reviewed on such and such a date. So you see that whenever you're doing it, it's not just sitting there, but we actually are looking at it. And
Okay,
that-
not only a template for self-update, but a process. So,
Right.
you know, outline, these are the steps that you take in performing that update.
okay. Anybody else have any?
Questions or
Questions at this time?
concerns or observations about how this has been working for you and what brings you to this point now?
It'll definitely be good to have a plan, to not have to be
Yeah.
reactive anymore.
Right.
You know, I've never heard anyone say that they've regretted passing the CPA. You know, you look around and look at how some of this money's been spent, and then the larger ticket items that were done bonded and things like that. We've got property that'll be protected forever because of the citizens of the town had the wisdom to say, you know what, we need to have an asset that we can make sure that we have this property and things like that, you know? And you look around at some of the ball fields and some of the things that have been done in different parts of town, and it's a wonderful thing. It's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So it's been local, it's been handled local, and that's the way that it should be. So when we need help like now, we'll come and ask you. But we really are not very excited about people telling us, no, you can't do this with your money.
Right.
Not that they've done it before, but just to make sure, let's not start now.
another thing that I wrote down, and we've said this for 10 years at least, that we want to have an online application. I don't know if other communities do that, if that's feasible, because there's so much copying and so much, that if people just could go online and plug it in, to streamline the process, if that's a feasible solution.
Certainly, a fillable form is easy to do. We'd have to, you also mentioned earlier, revamping your website to be more informative. That's not a skill that we have in-house in our firm, but, we could help you work with somebody to
Right.
design these things. If that's,
And I think we're also locked in with the town unless we have something that shoots off from the town.
yeah,
And I don't know if that's
as to what the
recommended,
content is that you can
that
provide.
you have pretty much a basic template that you plug in.
Yeah, it's more the, excuse me, it's more the content.
Yes.
And the educational component. I haven't been on the committee that long and sort of knew about the act, but didn't know a lot about it. So it's been a learning process for me. And I'm just surprised how many people don't know about it and the very cool things that get done with the money. I'd love to see more outreach and different ways to let people know that, the reason this is a park here is because you all paid for it. And that's, I think, is
Maybe we should have one of our meetings in the nicer weather at one of the sites that we funded. Have an open
Yeah.
meeting.
Mill Villages Park would work well.
It's a few places.
I
Great Hall.
I can't hear from over here.
Oh,
And
sorry.
just remember, I'm old. The
I
hearing's
said-
going.
I said Mill Villages Park would be a nice
Absolutely.
location for a remote meeting, or the Great Hall would be a nice location for
Absolutely.
a remote meeting. There's lots, there's a list of 10.
Lots of places.
Great. That's a great idea. That I'll get to talking about the outreach process. So that's something that we can incorporate into that.
And one of the things that are the hardest piece of this is that so many people coming with requests for maintenance,
Yes.
and we don't do maintenance.
Discerning maintenance versus,
And I don't think on your list, or maybe I've missed it, that CIPC, which is the Capital Improvements Committee for
Yeah.
the town,
uh-huh,
that at one time we started to meet with them because what they would do is they'd say, we don't have money, go to CPC. But then we'd say, we don't have money, you need to go back. So the people were wasting months
yeah.
getting on agendas and finding out that they were in the wrong place.
Yeah,
but
that's frustrating.
To have the CIPC have a better handle on what we can, probably what we cannot do, which is a lot of what they want done.
Yeah. So you need to educate your other boards about what it is and what your role is compared with theirs. That can certainly be something that's part of your annual update process, is to, go around reminding people what you are and what CPC can, what the CPA fund can do, and how to use it, how to apply, and so forth.
Because we have to twice a year go before finance committee. And go over all the projects that are coming forth. And typically we have to explain the whole process. There's, a lot of change on on these committees. So
Yeah.
some of the people know it very well and others are brand new to it. So it's a time to explain to them CPC, how it works, and then the projects. So they're trying to get an understanding of both what we do and what we're proposing to be funded.
Yeah.
And to get people to understand the nuances with the law and how the money has to be spent, and
Yeah.
CPA funds need to be spent last. They're not supposed
And that's
to be
something that
spent
we
first.
have to really push hard and be very clear, crystal clear, that whatever the project is, if it's funded with our money and their money has to be raised and spent first. Because we have not always been real good about it. Their money gets spent, but it's not first.
Right. Yeah. So helping to make routine this education and make this information more widely available so that both the public, other boards and committees, other town staff are all on the same page about how you use CPA.
And I think that Joanne does the award letters, and that is spelled out in the award letters, right? To the, so that they have it, so they understand.
Copy of one of those.
So, I mean, at every stage of the process, as you point out, people need to be reminded what it is and how it works.
And having Joanne working is a huge help because
That's huge.
things don't fall through the cracks so much.
Yeah.
Because with people on our committee changing, the people that are, because we have people that are the liaison for each project. So if that person changes, then you don't have the contact person that helps you run through the warrants to get the bills paid, to also remind you that we can't do this, or have you spent all your money, or, you know, so they have a person, not just a committee that they're supposed to see once a month, that they can contact them at any point
Right.
with questions or problems.
That's enormously helpful. How does that how does the amount of work compare with the hours that you have?
And her job has changed.
Well, right, so I'm really the assistant to the select board, but I provide support to these guys. I would say I spend probably, on average, 5 hours every 2 weeks on CPC stuff. It just depends upon the time of year, and what's going on. So, you know, it's very manageable, and I think for not a lot of money out of the administrative budget, I think it's been helpful. And my goal has always been to get this to the point where they don't need me anymore. Get stuff. It will happen.
No, so much of
Get
what
things
she does.
organized and in a process so that it's easy for a volunteer to just take on and do.
Yeah.
But so much of what she does is fluid, in that there will be things that will occur during her business day when she's doing other duties that she just handles on the side. I'm sure that she doesn't keep track of her, oh, well, this should have been charged to, you know, the CPC or things like that. Because of her basic understanding, being one of the first members here and being able to see this grow, she is in a position where in a 24/7 day, she sees different things that are necessary actions that the board has to take, or responsibilities that have to be done, that she just picks up casually. You know, and doesn't even come back and let us know, oh, I did this, that, or the other, because she knows there's something that needs to be done. She's really the kind of the glue that holds us all together. And she will never admit to that, but is really our backbone.
Yeah. Thank you. You won't need me in 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always find that things get done when people get paid to do them.
Well, that's the other thing, because, right, I get it.
The
Like
great
minutes.
motivator.
Yeah, I get it.
So, okay. More comments, observations about how things have been working?
No, it's been much better since we decided to spend some of our administrative budget and have somebody help keep us organized.
And this actually the issue was forced because the planning department wanted money to pay for the assistant to do affordable housing. And I said, if they're gonna do that, then we're gonna have somebody do our work too. And that kind of fell by the wayside.
It's been way better since then.
Actually, that brings up a question that I was going to ask is, you're using funds on affordable housing. How has that gone for Grafton?
What we've done mostly has been invested in the housing trust. All right, they're the only ones that have come to us for money. You know, if Habitat for Humanity had come to us, you know, we would have considered funding them as well. But that's the whole affordable housing approach in this town has been very slow to take shape. We've been trying to work in concert with the housing authority as far as one of the points that John made is that we can't do any maintenance or things like that. But what we can do is if we work in concert with the housing authority, we can look at some units that we may be able to get together or fund, and then have them administered by the housing authority on an ongoing basis. But it's been a process, and it's been over a period of time working with the trust to try to get into a position where we can make a sizable dent in 40B. But it's
It's a challenge
process.
for
It's
small
yeah, and
communities
this is
everywhere.
not something that we can say, okay, let's bond this, and then we can build another 40 unit development or something like that. You can't,
Right.
you know. So it's
Quantity of CPA funds compared to what it costs to
Yeah.
really make a dent in the problem is just out of scale. And this is a problem that communities encounter everywhere. So looking for strategies for how you can use your affordable housing funds productively is, I mean, it's something that we work with a lot of communities on. So we'll give some thought to this as well.
you know, we've been pushing for the longest time a three-pronged approach between the town, the housing authority, and the funding agent being the housing trust. We have 3 or 4 different developments in town that are by the Executive Office of Community and Development, and we have as-built drawings and things like that, that if we had land from the town and then money from the Affordable Housing Trust, if we could blend in with the community, Executive Office of Community and Development, and authorize use of some of these as-built plans, there's money that we have, there's land, there's plans that are there, we have a clerk of the works, we could be doing something.
Yeah.
But getting everybody together to do something like that in concert has been an incredible effort
Yeah.
to try to do all that. And then once it's built and once it's housed and things like that, the housing authority can then run it, you know? So
Yeah. Thanks.
it's exasperating.
But one of the successes that we have had with so many projects are we leverage our dollars. And that's the hope with affordable housing is that
Yeah.
our dollar can be one of, 20 other sources, however they have to go out with private or state funding to help develop something. Because you've got to have that initial money to say, okay, the project that you do have the plans and somebody will look at it and say, okay, we can take this and run with it. So we're hoping that the little, and I'm guessing they have about $1 million more or less.
They have
More
a
than
little more than that now. It's really grown.
That's
There was a settlement, goodness, like 6 years ago now, 5.5 years ago now, from a 40B development that didn't follow all the 40B rules. And so there was a substantial nest egg, almost $1 million from that. So I think it's close to 1.7.
So it's
I mean, all of the reserves, 10% of our revenue every year has been transferred over to them.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 17 years of that.
so.
And it's like, you look at that much money and you say, boy, what we could do with it in a park or something like that, you know? But it's just, when you're talking about affordable housing, it's a huge bill,
Right.
you know? So 1.7 is not really a windfall.
No, but leverage, that is a generous chunk of money to be able to use to leverage a housing project, but then you really need to find a capable partner who does housing development, who can take that project on and get together all those other sources of funding that are needed to be able to get it off the ground. Because none of the actors, the housing authority and the town are both not in the business of housing development, and for a lot of reasons, it's not going to be cost effective to use those entities to be the housing developer. So, what communities.
That's why you need the housing trust.
And the
You know,
housing trust
there's
holds
not,
the
you know,
funds.
there's got to be a collaboration here. And, and someone has to have the passion to bring them together because they're not going to come together naturally.
Right.
It's not a natural union, you know?
Yeah.
So, I've been screaming the same plan for over 10 years now, and it'll work.
We'll get there eventually.
Maybe you need to have
By the
a,
time I'm ready to move.
Uh,
Oh, it's not senior housing, this is affordable housing. And it could be senior housing too.
all right.
Anything else?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to do then is, I mean, unless somebody has something else that they wanted to contribute for your goals and objectives, go over the outreach process and the timeline. So the first couple of months, we're looking at doing some stakeholder and public outreach to collect input on mainly understanding the general context, as well as what are some potential opportunities and issues that this plan can address or can highlight in the plan. And then just to kind of give an overview first and then come back and talk about that further. Then over the summer, we'd be working on drafting the actual community preservation plan document, both the background research analysis, goals and priorities, as well as the updated procedures and the materials that you're going to use to educate about the CPA. And so then over the month of September, you would be going through the process of reviewing the draft plan, and that would entail a public hearing and review by the committee itself and by any other leadership who you feel need to be involved in reviewing the plan. And then we would complete the plan by the end of September. So back to the stakeholder and public outreach. There are a number of ways that we typically do this, and so we like to tailor the process around what is going to work in the community that we're working in. So I'm looking for your input on what kind of a public process is you would see working best here. We could do a series of focus groups, for example, that would be highlighting specific program areas, maybe 3 focus groups, one for open space and recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Or there could be one larger community forum where we'd invite all of these, all of the stakeholders, all of the people interested in those to that community forum. So I would put out either of those 2 ideas, and if we wanted to if you had some other ideas, I would entertain that as well.
Do people have thoughts? I don't know that we need to have 3 meetings. I think to get all of us to go to 3 meetings and not conflict with other meetings, but to get everybody in one room, because that way everybody's sharing
Yeah,
why they're there
yeah.
is important to them.
And there is a lot of crossover between some of these things, like historical restoration may also include some, a lot of these projects have more than one component, they have different facets to them, so there's a lot of overlap, so it might be good to get that.
One public forum seems
I
as
think
though
that
it
would
would,
probably-
okay.
And to get people to attend, I think that's the other, you don't want.
What's the basic purpose of the public forum? Is it outreach, or is it to solicit information?
Both. So the public forum would most likely begin with a presentation where we provide information about the history of CPA in Grafton and how CPA works in general. And then what are the kinds of things that you've funded in the past? What can you fund? And then what are some things that people would like to see CPA accomplish in the next 10 years, say? So that's more or less the outline of what we would cover in the forum. We may also want to convene some smaller groups. You all don't need to be present at those smaller groups, but say if you suggested on the back of the page or on the second page, there's a list of stakeholders that we put out. These are people who we would anticipate either people or groups that we would anticipate wanting to interact with throughout this process. So in some way or another, we would maybe combine some groups of people to talk to and have an informal conversation. We don't necessarily have to start with a presentation. It doesn't need to be televised and advertised per se.
Why? We have a
It-
public access television station here.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
the forum would absolutely be. We want to have part of this process be inviting public input. It's often helpful to have one-on-one conversations with people who can provide us with some background context and understanding. That's typically how we carry out a process. But if that's not something that the committee would want us to do, we have other ways of getting information, but we often find it helpful to have one-on-one or small group conversations with people who can provide us with some background information.
That's almost more like preparation meetings versus outreach meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say for like an outreach kind of thing, it won't really, it might be too late in the process to get much out of it for drafting the plan, but it could certainly like help inform people that we're working on it. Is the National Night Out, which happens on August 4th this year. So that we hold basically just slightly more toward the main road over here, right in front of the police station and the new cable studio.
Yeah.
Primarily a lot of families that come to that, and but there's a lot of we have tables set up from the town departments and other things that we want to let the community know about as well.
That could be a good opportunity for outreach. Where it falls in the planning process, as you say, is somewhat late, but by that time we may have some materials that we could prepare to be able to create a little display about CPA and the fact that this planning process is going on.
But to what Jim was saying,
Yeah.
because there is, a cable station here, but also just the website and social media, what else do you do on the outreach other than just a forum?
Yeah. Personal contact is the most important way to bring people to participate, whether to participate in taking a survey or to come to a meeting, come to a forum. By extending an invitation to each of the boards and committees, for example, that we've listed, and asking them to invite their committee members to attend, and asking them to let the people who they're connected with know about this planning process. That personal connection can often have the greatest effect in bringing people to participate. So it's obviously important to use these broader media, the cable television, the newspaper, and social media, and so forth. Communities can also, as you pointed out, the community event, we can talk about whether there are some other opportunities. You had mentioned earlier the possibility of hosting an open meeting for this process at one of your parks, that with substantial publicity in advance could be a good opportunity. But communities can also use the town messaging system. Do you have a messaging system that reaches people by whatever format they
We have a
prefer?
code red.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah, cool.
but
Is that
it's
only
not
used for
yeah,
emergencies?
code red is
emergencies,
primarily
yeah.
for like emergency and other types of natural
But there's a
type
town,
outreach.
we can
but
put it on the.
There is also the
Yeah.
We can,
the town website notification system as well. Like if you're signing up to get notices on like things like board meetings and stuff,
That,
you
yeah.
can also send that out from that way. Mm-hmm. But that's going to be relatively small percentage of the population of the town that will have
That will-
seen those.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nowadays, everybody has a different way that they prefer to be reached. And they get some, a small section of people get information from each of these different formats. So it's very hard to reach everyone, but we do the best we can by using as many different formats as possible. Email lists are also a good way. If there's a school email list, recreation email list,
recreation has a very
recreation. So
extensive
if they're
email
willing,
list.
if they see this as something that's relevant to what their constituents are interested in hearing about, they can also share a blurb about your event through that.
Well, and I would imagine Ken, the land trust would be willing to publicize outreach meetings regarding this. Who
It's not
can?
listening to you.
The land trust would be willing to publicize outreach meetings around this, wouldn't they?
Certainly.
By a newsletter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they have a large member base that might not be identical to the recreation
Right.
list, just because of,
We
Right.
could also
Reference
reach
of
out to
people.
the superintendent of Grafton Schools to see if he'll add that to his newsletter that he sends out. I think it's once a month. He does one.
So newsletters include Grafton Schools, Recreation. I'm sure the senior
Yeah,
center
senior
has it.
center has.
Fogey. But again, I go back to Grafton
The
Community
Historical
Television.
Society has a
We have,
email.
when there's no programming on, there are announcements that are on the bulletin board there.
well, and Jim might even mention to Roberta when we were on the phone that this might even be something she could be interviewed.
Well, that's what I was saying, is that we could sit you down with Bob DeTolma and have a nice discussion about exactly what you're doing and what the intent is.
Yep.
And have you just come over to the studio and we've got a nice green screen now, so we could make it look like you're in the mountains or anything.
You could take pictures of all of your CPA projects and put them behind me on the green screen, so,
There you go.
And there are certainly other things that the TV studio has said it before as well, like on the town warrants, little like short videos, 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes, that just articulate like what is this about? Very short, kind of let people get something out of quick, bite, so to speak. They'll put it on YouTube, put it on the town Facebook page, and things like that as well.
yeah.
So, that in addition to a longer interview or a longer program, that could be.
That's,
something
you
to
do
do.
that at the same time, Grafton
exactly.
minute by minute.
Okay.
Are you adverse to making a call,
Making a call?
telephone call, and I'll set something up and maybe you could talk with them and see if you can arrange something?
Sure. You know what I would like to do is to take the input that you're giving on the public participation and just outline kind of a final public participation plan, which I can share with Joanne. And then I'll work with Joanne to execute that. And I think that sounds to me as though it could fit well in this process, but I want to make sure that I don't overpromise and what we can expect to be able to do within the time frame that we have. But it sounds so. What I could see being a potential process, and I'm kind of thinking through this as I speak, is to have one larger public forum, in addition to, and that would be an evening event, in addition to maybe an open meeting that could be a daytime event at one of your parks. Or, that was
I'm sorry, I don't see that happening.
okay.
You
You're,
don't see
you're,
what happening.
huh?
You don't see what happened.
The people are gonna come out to the, or we could have different meetings there and people are gonna come out and talk about, CPA and things like that. I think that we have to have a presentation to make, okay? And then make it available with different multimedia and things like that. But if we advertise that, we'd like you to come out at this venue and we'd like to talk to you about the things that we do, while that may be interesting to some of the committees that are out there that have a vested interest, I don't think that people are gonna come out after a long day at work and sit down and say, oh, gee, I was wondering if CPA was going to come out and do a program like this. You know what I mean? Am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think there's a distinction between a stakeholder in the plan and a resident. And I'm not saying that every resident isn't a stakeholder in CPA, but I think you have people who are active in town committees who would be on this stakeholder list, and I think they would come out. I think if we let Little League and the soccer club and the Historical Society and the Historical Commission all know about this, I think that we will have representatives of those groups at the meeting.
See, if you're going to do something like that, you've got to contact them and you've got to tell them, here's why you should come to something like that.
But we're going to. I mean, it's gonna be an invitation. It's gonna be,
Okay.
this is the Community Preservation Committee is creating a plan. It's forward-looking. I mean, what did you do on the open space and rec plan? You had to have done similar
Had
stuff.
We
multiple.
did multiple
meetings.
outreach
Yeah,
meetings.
so it's the same type of thing, and that's how you get the input.
So how many people showed up for that?
About a dozen.
Okay, because I'm kind of, I mean, I see different things come up and I'm like, oh, wow, this would be really cool to go to. I just am too busy. I mean,
So then let
that's-
me throw this back at you. Then what, I don't think doing a presentation and showing it on cable TV is going to get us input. I think it's going to educate people, but it's not interactive, right? So,
Well, if you create interest, then they will contact you. All I'm saying is that how much are you gonna get from a focus group? I don't see people coming for a focus group, I'm sorry. I just don't see it
then
happening.
how would you get the information? I mean,
What-
because I agree with
If
you,
I
you
may,
have
Jim?
to advertise the focus group, right?
Yeah.
You have to do enough advertising of what's going on.
Yeah,
But
so-
if you don't do a focus group, how do you get the info?
If I may, Jim,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that, we're gonna get a very small number of people to attend a focus group, even if they have the interest. That's my feeling. I think it's still probably worth doing. But I think ahead of even having that, having a short bite-sized thing, so people who are just really busy, don't even have the time to listen to a longer presentation, can hear what it is. And at the same time in that segment, we have a survey going out. We have, these dates and times for other meetings. We love your input. And then the longer, thing as well, people who want to be informed but may not have, may not think they have anything to add at the time. Maybe still willing to do a survey, maybe not. But having these other venues that we can inform them what this is, and at the same time solicit their input to come back, come to us in different venues. Because many things that I've seen, like was just mentioned, is a lot of things that are interesting even to me, being very informed in this town, that I just can't make it.
Now, one,
And things that have gone, I've seen very few people that go to them.
people may be more likely to encounter what we're doing if we take it to an event where people are going to be already. Do you have a local farmers market?
Yeah, we do.
How
So-
widely attended is the farmers
There's-
market?
It's usually pretty good. This past year, we definitely had a lot of weather-related events during the normal farmers market period, which is on the common. And this coming year, I don't know yet, but we may not have the access for
Have
the
the
common for the
common.
farmers market.
They will.
You will have it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So,
Well, if we were to, let me go back and beat the horse. If we were to produce a program that showed all of this, that gave the information, that showed things that we've done and things like that, not only would we make that available for viewing on cable, and not everyone has cable, however, we have that digital packet that can be provided to our stakeholders, if you will, and they could make that available to their groups, look at it at their leisure, and then contact if they have anything that comes out of it. So you have something that is portable, and it doesn't require everybody coming together next Tuesday, and if it doesn't rain, So if we could produce something and then make it available, then people will look at it if they have an interest of doing that, and then we'll have contact
But I
information.
think that depends on the person, because I couldn't even tell you what the public access channels are.
But
You know,
if you had content that you could do just a simple link to YouTube or something.
No, but I'm saying that some people want to go to a meeting. I want to go talk, and I want to hear, and I want to discuss. I don't want to just have, and I'm one person.
Okay.
This is getting back to what she said. You got to do it through multiple avenues to make
Yeah.
it work.
And-
So
And that's kind of why I said there's a lot of people that, to me, would go to the meeting to.
It's in their
sit.
best interest to attend because they're going to apply for funding. So if they understand what the funding is all about,
Yeah.
then they will
Yeah.
be there, or they'll get somebody else to represent them. I think not everybody can attend everything, but you've got to have an opportunity for these people to be able to speak, to share, to learn.
But isn't that what we do here? So that if we educate people about what we do and they're interested in it, then they'll come and say, what can I do?
And I agree. A lot of people would love to go to the meetings, but if we don't explore multiple avenues to inform them what this meeting even going to be about, they may
Right.
not know much about CPC to begin
But I
with.
think that's the
and
whole,
then,
it's
know,
not
that's
like
why
we're having a
having it
meeting
on-
and people are expected, it's, no,
Gotta
you have
create
to do,
awareness.
there's a lot of work.
yeah, that's why
So
having it on the cable
Make it,
station ahead of the
any
meeting.
event, you've got to do a lot of work to get people to show up.
I think, and I don't know all the different things, but like your idea of the farmer's market, some sort of event that's already cooked in that people are going to and have some way of,
And the farmer's market actually checks off the box of it taking place at a CPA-funded site. So it seems to me that having the formal presentation and public forum, which we can utilize the cable TV along with other media to advertise. And the cable TV and other media can also advertise a second event that we can participate in a farmer's market, and at the same time be running a survey, so that we have those 3 avenues for people to participate, and then we're going to use all of the available avenues for people to find out about it and be personally invited to come and participate. I think that sounds like a plan.
but it's
It
also,
would be
it's
good.
also.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It would be good to get their feedback from not only the forum, but if we're having other opportunities for people to be educated, to also be able to respond and provide their feedback. In other
At all these, what is the way you prefer to hear about this? What's the way you prefer to
Yes.
participate?
Yeah.
Like, I just came to this meeting, but I really prefer it to be on cable TV.
But,
Or I want it all online.
When we talk about cable, I'm also talking about, we prepare, say, like a 15-minute program or something like that, that's portable, that you can take with you. It's digital, okay? So you can play it at a different gathering or something like that, or you could make it available just to a group. I'm not just saying, oh, let's put something on a TV show. I'm saying that we now have the capability with the studio, we have the capability to produce information that you can take with you when you leave and use it as you will, okay?
Yep, that'll be useful.
And like I would say for me, explicitly to beat the horse just a little bit more, is that having the information about what this is ahead of the meetings, to have some information going out along with the solicitation to come back in to us, is a big deal for me. It's the idea that people may not be interested till they see a 5-minute clip or 2-minute clip, and they see that clip, go, oh, I want to learn more, see a 30-minute video or whatever, and then they hear, oh yeah, it's me. You know what? Now that I know about it, I want to go and I want to participate. But if they just read about it, people find out and give us your feedback on CPC, CPA, however we're describing it. It's not gonna elicit any sort of any much of a response to either participating even in the survey. That's my feeling. Not everyone is going to respond to that as their venue to come in and do that, but having that ahead of time is, in my mind, a big deal to have.
I think it's also just about expectations.
Yep.
I mean, let's face it. I don't know what the current population of Grafton is. We are not going to get 90% of the folks giving us feedback. Let's face it. But if you get a core group, or you get 5 new people that didn't realize what their money was going to, that now know it, we're doing our job. And so I think sometimes we shouldn't get totally caught up with kind of the numbers game in one respect, but it's doing the things that we should be doing and doing our due diligence and best effort. And you might end up with a new person on CPA or 3 new projects, and I think that's what it's all about. And
That's it, that's what we do.
yep, and I don't think we should worry too much about having to worry about having an
Numbers.
event or something. I mean, it's good to think about those things, but
Right. I don't want to cut the conversation short, but I want to keep you moving because we have 8 people in the audience waiting to speak.
Yes. Well, I appreciate. I think that we've covered most of what I need in order to be able to have marching orders to go forward with the process. I just did want to come back to the cable question a little bit more, in that there are many different forms that this could take. And so a couple of important, I think, questions to answer up front before we go into it very far is, first of all, is it going to get more viewership by having, say, a 60-second or a 90-second kind of advertisement that gives all the information, says this is what CPA is, and here's how you can participate in the process? Or would it be helpful to have 5 minutes, 15 minutes? I imagine that a half hour is going to lose most audiences. So, and maybe these aren't questions that you need to answer right now, but maybe you can get back to me.
Well, the answer also is that we could do all of
And-
that.
Yeah,
And the second.
We have our own studio now, and we can do it.
Right. So the second question, and so I can provide some material no matter what. The second question is, who is the best face to put on your cable media? Do you want my face, or do you want to have people in town who people know, who are familiar with, to be the spokesperson? The answer to that question really depends on, who you're trying to reach and how you think they'll feel about it.
Nominate Jim.
no,
No, no, absolutely not. But I think it should be you.
And
I
like,
know,
I was gonna
With
say,
Bob,
standing
like you suggested.
as Jim, it's like, to me, a lot of people in the town.
It needs to be a local person. I mean,
Yes.
it's one thing that if you're participating in a discussion
Yeah,
to say, this is what I'm helping you do,
yeah,
but it needs to be a committee member that's saying, I'm a member of this committee, and this is,
I also think the star of it should be the projects.
yeah.
And not a face. Maybe it's the voice over those projects or something, but show people what's been done.
this is what
Yeah,
we've
we
done.
can do
What do
that.
you want to do? What hasn't been done? What have we missed?
You don't want it to be any more than 5 minutes. We had to do something like that for the townhouse capital campaign, and it was very clear that if you go over 5 minutes, people lose interest very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, I think even just a 60, 90 second thing, and then you could say,
Well, we
if
can
you
do
want
both.
more information,
We could do
click
both.
here.
Right.
And
Exactly.
what
Here.
if you used, the idea of using the projects, use people who came to us and sought funds?
I think that's a great, yeah.
Yeah.
Or people who use those locations.
Right.
That benefit from it, or enjoy them, or whatever. But the local aspect and.
What I might suggest is that maybe a small number of you could collaborate together on how to organize this outreach. I'm happy to prepare any materials that I can for the outreach effort, but I think that you'll all be the most effective at knowing who to reach, who to speak for you, who to speak for these projects. And I'm happy to participate in a conversation if you'd like me to, but I think that you're the ones who can best
'Cause
decide
like for
what it is.
recreation, that Jen Anderson, who's the director,
Yeah,
could, with the background of the improvements at Silver Lake Beach, could speak, or the land trust in conjunction with the lands that we purchased and the hiking trails and the parks. There's so many really good speakers that Sandy said, let the projects speak to why this is important,
yeah,
to pique their interest.
great. I think this is kind of is solidifying in my mind how we're going to go forward with that planning process. So with that, I conclude my introduction, and if you have any final thoughts for me, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I will vacate the seat.
Okay, and any
Thank you
questions,
very much. It was
comments?
nice meeting you.
Very nice.
Before Roberta can go through Joanne, and because Joanne and Roberta will be
In communication.
right.
Chris McGoldrick, also the new town planner, is
And his
going to
he's
be very involved in
started
this.
yet.
He has. In fact, he and I met with Roberta earlier this week.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Thank you very much. And my apologies to everybody that had to wait. So we will skip over minutes and the treasurer's report for this right now. We'll go to the Lions Club that Peter Adams, you're here to talk about. project. Peter and anybody that you want to bring with you.
Bring your posse with you, Peter.
Want me here or up there or?
Wherever you.
Wherever
You can
you're
have a seat, you can drag up a chair.
Here, you know what, take this.
There's three of us spearheading this project for the Lions.
So we'll let Peter,
Peter's gonna be our mouthpiece though.
Oh. Why we're here tonight, we would like to pave the driveway and the parking area in the Lions Club. We are holding off on the parking areas that, you must have seen the plan that Norman Hill had drawn up. That was before my time. I've become a Lion in the fall, so I'm a little cub, actually.
Okay.
But,
They put you right to work. They put you right to work.
So we've talked to Tim McInerney about this, because he was gonna help us with the specs, because if it's a town-funded project, it has to be done the right way, of course. And he has offered up Brian,
Zerko.
yeah, Brian Zerko's assistance, and so we have measured it, gone over everything, and this is, you must have all got a copy of.
Yep.
This is Brian's estimate to the paving. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them as best I can. Right now, it's, millings were put down a few years ago, and the sun turns them basically back into asphalt. Millings are, what they grind off the highways. If they take an inch or two off, you've seen it on 495 or the Mass Pike. It's the rough stuff, and then they pave over it, but they end up with these millings, and they will melt back into asphalt. It's not really as good as real asphalt, and they don't, in my opinion, they don't stand up, which you can see in the Lions Club Road. It's not standing up like real asphalt does.
it's just the base, the initial coat, and then there'll be a second coat? Or is this,
This price here covers both coats.
okay,
And I was thinking of holding off pretty 5-6 years in between coats if we had to, but the more I think about it, we probably should do the second coat within the time frame that the money is there. The only thing, we have to run heavy trucks in there. I mean, trucks go in there for rubbish collection, I think, once a month, Dennis?
Twice a month, yeah,
Dennis is our president.
twice a month.
Twice a month. And if we end up, we're working on the bathrooms and the septic system for the soccer field, so there'd be heavy trucks going in, but it wouldn't be that many that it would disrupt. We'd try to get all that done between the first and second coat of asphalt.
So when would you like to do this work and to incur the expense?
After town meeting, this
so
town,
this summer,
yes.
you wanna do both coats this summer?
Yeah, no, we could hold off a year. I mean, I know there's a 2-year, if the funds are
Well,
approved.
we can make it a 5-year sunset, we don't, 2 years just for us to
Oh, I
keep
thought,
it
okay.
going, that's self-imposed, we initially had no sunsets.
Oh, okay. I thought
Thank
it
you
was,
for bringing that up, because there's one left. I'm responsible.
Timing is definitely an issue because, as I said in my presentation, we have more than 5,000 people that use the property. Especially the soccer league. The soccer league has a spring schedule and a fall schedule. And we'd have to do the road in between their schedules.
of course.
Otherwise, we'd be,
So what months are you talking about?
we're talking summer months. So we're talking, let's see, June, July, and August, and then September, the soccer league comes back. So we're talking about a 4-month period to get it done.
So if the money were available on July 1st,
That
would
would
that be
work.
appropriate?
Yeah, as long as we could get Brian to have the available time. He would be the supervisor, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd be looking
That
at,
shouldn't be, it's not that big of a project. They should be able to do that in a week or two at the most. And I'm not saying they'd be working full-time.
So the question involves whether needs to be fiscal 2020 funds or 2021 funds. That's the basis of the question. That's all.
So
If it was fiscal 21 fund, we'd be talking about
after
doing that base, the base work, all the base coat and everything this coming summer of
Right.
20, after July 1st.
Correct.
And then the second coat might be the following summer.
And we haven't spent a dime of the engineering money yet.
1,800.
Oh, we
Spent
bought a
some.
program.
1,800.
Uh,
I think it was 1,800.
Oh, I thought it was 4.
400?
I thought it was 4 for the program for the
No, I
septic.
think it was like 1,800.
Okay,
Yeah.
but, there's nothing spent on the road for
Could say
engineering?
that, keep saying that, because that's good to keep,
Well, that's part of Tim's prodding, save money.
no, but that's, you need to, just to remind, not
Yeah.
us, but everybody.
Yes.
Not just us. You've
Pete's in-kind work for the.
you've convinced the choir here,
perk
you need
test
to
and
preach to the
depot
masses.
test, he did it all, used his equipment. So we're trying to be as frugal as we can, and with the help of the town administrator, it's been wonderful. He's taken us, he's taken our interest on, and he's,
Because whatever you didn't spend would go back.
Correct.
That we would then reap a portion to.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we're trying to be as frugal as we can and get as much out of the money that we do get, to make the place available.
Yeah, and of the funds that have already been appropriated for the engineering, engineering work, we probably will end up spending some more of that on the bathrooms, depending on how we end up with it. There again, Tim's trying to find ways for us to get that done without spending very much money. So there may be some additional engineering costs involved for that part of the project. But we're not far enough along to be able to say. We're still working with Tim and the staff to
So
explore
what's
ways.
the plan and where are you with the bathroom project?
We've done the perk test in the deep holes. Oddly enough, I guess this type of a septic system, because it's for a field, isn't covered by Title V really, so he's gotta work with the, Board of Health agent that comes from Worcester to get the specs together, then Brian's supposed to design it. And-
So what is, I'm just curious, it's not a Title V system, what is it?
I don't know,
Okay.
and I install, and I don't know.
I
He
mean,
just-
septic system's a septic system.
What I was told is it's not like it's a 3-bedroom house, because
Right,
there are days when there's nobody there. There are months when there's
It's
hardly
like-
anybody
and-
there.
And
Yeah, but-
2 days you get 6 months worth.
oh,
That's right.
okay, it's still a Title V system, it's just.
Oh, yeah, oh, yes.
Okay,
Oh, it would
okay.
be an approved system.
Oh,
It's just, it's
It-
not,
it-
it's not under the typical guidelines of a restaurant with,
There's
or a
actually
house.
lots of ways you can figure that out.
Oh,
That's,
oh, yeah.
and it's actually in Title V for this type of venue, so that's, okay.
What
So it's-
Tim told me today that it's almost like an exemption he has to go for, because given the size of the field, it would be expected that they would have a larger bathroom than what they want to put on there. They want to do 2 unisex stalls.
Correct.
So because of the size of the field, I guess your typical plans requirements would say you have to have, I don't know, 4 or 5.
So it's more plumbing code than it is
yes,
Title V.
that was my
And so
understanding.
then it's, the Title V part's probably pretty easy. The plumbing code is where you'd go to the state to get a variance
Yes.
from them. Okay,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
think, yeah.
I mean, the design part is above my head, so
It's
I
okay.
don't.
I'm just, yeah, just.
But I know something that if we hired an engineering firm, it'd probably be $5,000, so
Yeah.
we're saving that, so that, which is a good.
Do you know where we are with the dock?
We,
What's up, Doc?
which,
Sorry.
we're actually still discussing the dock, because there's some issues with liability for a dock, there's some issues with, having to go to conservation.
Oh, don't stay away from those people.
And,
Oh my
because I
God.
sit on conservation. Actually, the bigger issue is your Army Corps and other
I'm
permits.
sure, yeah.
I mean,
There's some
conservation is pretty, there's certain things we
Yeah.
can approve, and then there's, like, if you put in a permanent dock, now you're opening yourself up to Army Corps and a bunch of other things, which isn't that's beyond us, so.
Yeah, right, and we did, we talked with our liability insurance company, there is some liability involved.
Yeah.
So we're kind of backing down a little bit on the dock.
All right.
It was a great idea, but as we looked into it, it was gonna be more costly than we
Yeah.
we anticipated, you know.
You know,
It's not like we can just throw some wood in the water and put it on barrels.
actually.
Yeah, which
and
you could
no,
really
you
do,
can.
but
You
I
can,
mean,
but
But
this
as
is,
long
yeah.
as it's not a permanent dock.
Right.
Correct, and you have a lot of flexibility with
Right.
that.
Right, and then you gotta, you know, there's labor involved with
Yep.
maintaining it, so we're still, it's still up in the air right now, the dock.
Yeah, you don't want to have a dock up in the air.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's all.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions about it?
No, it just is if you do the base course, like 1 year, and then the following season you do the second, it's nice because then any kind of settlement you get out of it, and you actually may last, you know that.
That's the perfect,
Yeah,
send
you don't wanna wait too long,
right.
but that perfect kind of season
Right.
type of thing really gets you the best,
It's good to wait 1 or 2 seasons.
right, gives you that optimum settlement and
And that would fit very well with, you know, whatever we might end up
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
with the
between
bathroom.
the
With the
soccer
bathroom.
league and the haunted hayride that hopefully the mosquitoes let us have this year.
So if
Yeah, they're all going to die with that virus.
you were gonna
That's it.
do
Now we got the coronavirus to worry
a
about.
2-year plan, would you divide this in half? Or would we just say, this is what it is and
We
you do
would,
it?
we would need to approve the whole thing, because you wouldn't want to approve one
Yeah.
and then.
And then.
Yeah.
we're not
Whether
going
it's
to-
a good-
Sorry,
Yeah.
we're not gonna pay.
Wonder
Right,
if
give
we're
us
at
enough
the
money
other
to
half.
do half the project, and then tell us, sorry, we're gonna pull right out at the end.
Well, we wouldn't, but town meeting.
Yeah. You know, the elephant in the room is also, this town meeting, when they're gonna be going through a budget and all of the other talk that's been going on, the possibility of an override and things like that, people are gonna come out and say, why doesn't the Lions Club pave their own property? You know, there's always gonna be, people that are gonna be talking like that, so I think as long as you're prepared, as you always have been in the past, and I think you certainly have the support of anyone who knows anything about what you do, you know, so, and you'll always have that support, but just to be ready going in, to know that there will be people that are gonna be saying, well, if we gotta, I'm paying, you know, and it's got nothing to do with each other.
Right.
You know, if I'm talking about a 2.5 override, why are we gonna pave the Lions Club Road? You know, not understanding
Right.
what happens there.
In discussions that I've seen to date on budgetary matters, there is a recurring confusion between what's part of the budget and what's subject to Proposition 2.5, and what's outside the budget over which we have no control. Money is money, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Municipal finance is not quite that simple.
Sure?
Well, and clearly, the
But you're right
CPC
that-
funds cannot be used to pay for operating expenses in the
Right.
town.
That's part of the
That's the bottom
confusion.
line.
People don't distinguish between money that can only be spent for specific purposes and money that's part of the budget that can be allocated
general
this way or
fund.
that way.
Right.
It's a recurring source of confusion, and, you know, we're gonna expect it.
Just as long as
Can
you're
I-
prepared, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there
Yeah.
Can I
that leave their brains.
And have somebody from,
suggestion? In preparation, I would have, talking points that outline what you were given for the engineering work and how little you used and what in-kind services, put a value
To your
to the
in-kind
work that you
services,
did
yeah.
Yeah.
in in-kind services.
Okay.
Get a value to the in-kind services you're doing on the second part of it as well. Because that's where CPC is really a leverage. Because it is, the community comes together and does projects. These aren't necessarily town employees coming up with these projects, right?
And
I would
also
take it
So-
one step further.
the soccer
too. I think that
chip
as a-
president, somebody that's gonna stand up at town meeting and say, this is important, or whatever groups that are gonna be using this driveway to say, you know, I've had flat tires, my kids have had to drive through the mud, you know, this is something that we utilize. There are X hundreds of students that are kids that play, you know, so that it's not just you, it's the users that are.
And if it
saying-
wasn't for the Lions Club, we wouldn't have this league, because we wouldn't have any place to play.
That is true.
Well, and you gotta make sure people,
But you
because
have
you're gonna have people that are gonna stand up and tell the folks that wanna redo the lodge there, the money that we paid last year, we want them to have a friggin' bake sale. You know, there's people that really, they're not bright people, a lot of people.
Yeah,
They're not
Given all
smart
the
like
budget
us.
concerns that are going on right now, I think it behooves us as a committee to actually educate at town meeting before any of these projects
good
get
idea.
discussed. We've done that before, and I think it's prudent
I
to do
think
that.
the townspeople need to know that your money can't go towards a town
Right,
budget. I mean, it's not like you can take your CPC money
Right.
and offset the override vote.
Right.
You know, you just can't do it. It's just, you know, it's a different pot of money, and I think that's what, if you could make them understand that, then I think,
it.
some of the.
We could do a show.
Done, you know?
Can we sing and dance?
That's it. Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland, you know, let's have a show.
Yeah, and that's important for all CPC projects that come up.
Sure.
You know, and
Sure.
I think we saw some of that, we saw some of those same, issues pop up last year with that, particularly with the common restoration
Yep.
project, which is a fairly pricey thing. Well, why are we spending money on that?
That's right. And who's gonna be out there measuring the roots of the tree?
And two of them fell down today, and it
got
was
one
not
less.
our fault.
Didn't start the work at all.
You got one tree less up there now.
Two.
Two
Two.
less.
That's right.
Our Christmas tree's gone now too.
Did it hit
It did
that?
take,
Yeah, it took down like one side of it. All the branches were
I
like,
thought thought I saw all kinds of evergreen branches on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's down too. Sad.
That's okay, part of the plan is to plant, the species
We
that
were
are-
hoping to have
Yep.
a
We're
new
supposed to
Christmas
have
tree
it.
before.
We'll talk
it's
about
open.
that when we get
Let's
to it.
call
on the
it.
agenda.
You can help
Well,
replace
we
them.
certainly appreciate, you folks listening to us and understanding our plight. I mean, we've been running that place since the early sixties, and, you know, our membership is dwindling, which makes it difficult for us to, you know, to provide.
Well, give a little
the-
plug. How do you sign up and be a Lion?
You could do a show on
Yeah,
cable.
we could do a show.
Let's make
We
that
have a
happen.
studio. We have our own studio, you know.
So really,
And
why,
actually, we did have a membership night last night, just a
Oh.
membership information night.
Oh, cool.
We had 2 people sign up, right? 2 people sign up. If you're interested, I can give you, you can just come to a meeting and we'll let you know all about it. You know, as long, we're just looking for community-minded people. And because that's what Lions do. What, yeah.
Young ones,
What-
not like us.
Yeah, right. Community-minded, young people with a truck.
I have a truck.
You know, so-
Not like Don. He couldn't even make the trip up to the table.
Because that's what Lions do, you know, we're not a fraternal organization. What Lions do is we try to find a need in the community and we serve it. Where it's a need in the community that's not being served, we step up and we serve it. A prime example was what we did for the Historical Society. We did that
Oh, right,
wine,
that
wine fundraiser, that wine tasting fundraiser, and gave the Historical Society $10,000 that they needed to move to their new building. That was the community need that we identified at that particular time, and we stepped up and provided the funds. So that's what we do, and that's what we're looking for.
We also provide the concert.
Yeah, the concert, this year, the concert's gonna be at Mill Village.
Roof on our bandstand in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
We did the roof on the bandstand, the concert is gonna be at Mill Village, and it's gonna be Dan Gable again, same as the group
Oh, good.
we had last year, so.
That's good.
But they're already booked, we're already anticipating it.
That's good.
It
That's
should be
great.
pretty neat down there.
You might want to amend the front cover if you do have numbers for, and it says under funding sources, you're in kind. So if you have $10,000 of engineering or
Yeah, I
volunteer,
didn't know what to write in there.
In-kind services.
that's what we're working on with the lady that just left.
And you
Because
should,
it's gonna be a little more
If she
meaningful
ever comes back
application.
again.
yeah, it would be useful to try to get an estimate of the dollar amount
To
of the value.
plug in
of
a
those
number,
services.
yes.
and what,
You
if
know
you're
who
go- if
can
you're
help
going,
you with that is Ray Mead, because we went through that thing with Roney Park there.
Yeah.
With so much of the work that was done on his CPA grant, or CPC grant, that was volunteered work and things like that. He can help you with that.
Do you want the cover letter, or you want?
I'm just saying this, the face sheet that
The
says,
application.
You know what?
that has the,
Okay, yep,
the
okay.
dollar.
if you're going to amend that cover sheet, change it to fiscal year 2021.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joanne can help you with that.
And you know what? The total project cost, Dennis, is 140,000, right?
Right, I mean, it should be more
Well, he
than
did a
that.
lot of rounding up, so
Yeah, he wants
Oh, so you
essentially
took
a
some down.
15%.
But that's where you show it. You show the total project
we
cost,
want-
say like of 144,000.
We wanna make sure that
And
there's,
you're looking at 134 from us
contingency.
and then 10,000 from the other
And there.
source.
I don't know how many times I said to Brian, we can't go over budget. We
Yeah.
have to, it's easy to give money back
right.
than to
And that's-
spend it.
You
and
don't
not
know what's
have
gonna
it.
happen.
We usually require
Material
people to
costs could go up,
Right.
so you don't wanna.
do contingency.
Where's the
Yeah, so if we can
It's right
estimate the value of the in-kind services.
It's just a line that
Oh,
it's on.
Add that to the total project cost, so.
Yep.
And then that shows people are walking and saying, oh, this is $150,000 project, but they're only looking for $134,000 because they're coming up with the rest of it on their
Keep it at
own.
140, because that would be a
I'm sure we-
15%
sure we can do that.
contingency, and he's our
I don't
contingency guru.
know how
Okay.
much
Because I think I told you to
in-kind there
lower
would
it,
be
but
on
he
the,
knows
on
better.
the road.
I know, but he,
If they need material trucked in, I could help with that, something like
Okay,
that.
before
With
and
the
after.
septic system, I
Yeah,
know
but a lot of
we
this,
could do a lot.
We
That
still
was
have
already
people
done,
waiting
though.
in the audience. Do you
A
guys
lot of
still
this that
have
was already
questions?
done,
Sorry.
that should be
No,
included as
if you
part of
don't have
the
any, we don't
project.
have any.
Okay.
And
Thanks for all you guys
provided
do.
by
Just do that, then.
Zirkle,
Okay,
Yeah.
you
great.
know.
Now, we'll have
Value
the
of
public
that.
hearing in March,
Okay,
all right?
great,
Okay.
super. Good, thanks.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Guys,
Thank you.
Okay,
For Candy.
And thank you for all you do.
Candy's next. Yes, thank you.
No shit, really.
Very emphatic over there.
Now, here's the person that should be the spokesman that's on the, talking about all of the different things that are being done.
I just did enough videos the last week. They don't want my face anymore on TV.
Your experience, you're hired.
Right? Now I'm always willing to help.
So the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Okay, I don't know where you want me to begin besides I'm taking over the archival project that was, I think, started with Maureen back in around maybe 2006. Then Donna took over and took a couple year gap off, I guess you can say, and Paul reached out to me and I basically have just working on that, and the company that they were using to do this, actually there were two different companies, and both of those companies are no longer in business. And I was referred to Green Dragon, Green Dragon in Shrewsbury, that was used with the Historical Society, and they have done a couple of our books, and they came with high regard, and we've been very happy. And something with them too is that once they do your work, if you pay within 30 days, they give you, I think it's a 10% discount. So we also get money off to keep going. So I spoke with the gentleman who is our contact. His name is Matt, and his way of doing things, because they wanted to charge me to get some type of invoice for ongoing records, is that if he comes back with our records, he'll stay for a few minutes, look at the next few pieces that we have, do the quotes then, and then it's more realistic and more, up to date, I guess, instead of just giving roundabout numbers. And we do that for each town meeting, but I'll do whatever is easiest if you prefer to have, an ongoing list with one amount, I can do that, but we figured having him come in and look at the pieces that we have and then quote us would be better, because they don't have to charge us for that.
Are you talking about the items that are listed here? Or are you talking beyond that?
Beyond that,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
So we did have a few pieces or records that we had just received back, and to use up the money that was in there, around $4,900, and then after the quotes that he gave and the discounts, we ended up with, I believe, roughly like $1,000 left over. So he took a few more books, and then he said we'll work on getting a more comprehensive list when he comes for the next set, which he said would roughly be around 5,000 to keep it at what we have.
So I'm going by my memory, and this is from a few months ago. They have about 5,000 left from the original one that has no
We
sunset
did about
date.
4,900, yep.
4,900. All right.
And we
So-
just spent about, I think it was, like I said, around 3,900 maybe or so
Okay.
with this last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the additional stuff beyond what you've already done with
Correct.
the money.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, I was.
But, and this won't finish everything up, though.
No. So there was a list that Maureen had that some of them are done, and but we started to look through the vault and see what we had in there, and that's why he said, this would take more than I can stay. So if we just plug along at pieces and go aisle by aisle, he'll quote as we go. But yeah, there's lots of records that some aren't mine that I'd have to talk with other departments to see have them go through them, and then, you know, let him know too what we have left over. But we're currently working on like the vitals, and we have some selectmen records that are considered ours that he's currently working on, but other departments have things in there.
How old are these records?
We have some that are like 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. I mean, they go back. So we have all different ranges of years in there, honestly. So
Pretty old.
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So the last time that we allocated $5,000 was what year? Like,
A long time ago, because
was
we
a
had no
long-
sunset
Like,
data.
we don't
a
put a
long time
sunset
ago.
on
It really
those.
was.
Let me
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
Town record preservation.
so we've been waiting for you to come back
Yes,
again.
2006
So-
was the
And
fund.
this
Oh,
is exactly what this, what
Yeah.
we should be paying for, is stuff like this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep, it fits in perfectly.
Very excited that you're taking the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it was one of those things, and unfortunately, you know, as you know, I mean, we just weren't fully staffed, so it was one of those things that just
Yep.
wasn't up there on the priority list. So now we can get there and get it done.
Excellent.
Can I make a recommendation that you not put a sunset on this one though?
Okay.
Just because does he operate like the other gentleman did, just takes a
Takes
couple?
time. It takes time, yes.
So, and it,
Yeah.
Or maybe a 5-year sunset.
Yeah,
I mean, we
or
can't
somebody
not
should
do-
write that down so we
Do
remember.
any more non-sunset, please?
No, I don't want to do any more non-sunsets. We
5
can
years.
always
Okay.
reallocate,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
a nice long sunset.
Or
Just
five,
so,
like 5 years.
yeah, something like that.
My one question on this, for everything that's on this page, is there any chance at all that it would go over 5,000?
So he quoted me, and he went a little higher to make sure that we did not go over that.
Okay.
And like he said, until he gets them too, he won't know until he's in there. But he was looking at the pieces, holding them, looking at them, and then, you know, was quoting from there. But there's obviously a chance something could need further work than.
but
what he saw.
that's basically
Yeah.
a 20% cushion there.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And will he adhere to his pricing even if it takes him 3 years to get to it?
So I can further up with that, just because this was kind of all right, we got to do this, and then we got to put it in 3 months before. We kind of talked quickly, but I can email him further and talk to him and make sure that we have some type of an agreement to that.
Want to make sure you have the
Yeah.
funds you need to pay for
Yeah.
the work.
That was my main reason for asking that I think.
I knew where you were going.
Yeah, we should do this, and if we need to say, let's do 6,000 instead of 5,000 or whatever, that's what we should do, because
Right.
like we just said earlier, it'll come back.
Does this list include all the documents you would intend to do, or just the next batch?
That's the next batch.
And so there are batches after this.
Correct. Yes.
And so you can just keep coming back when you've done these, even if you can only do 8 out of 9 of them, you can still come back and get the next batch.
Right.
So that's not real, there's not a real problem here anywhere.
No, you'll just be seeing.
Especially if we have
oh, that improves our vintage.
Yeah,
plenty of opportunity
right,
to come back.
fine.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kim.
That's excellent.
All right. That's
Thank
it.
you very much, Candy.
That's easy enough. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry we had to have you sitting here for
Thanks,
so
Ken.
long, but you're the star of the show. Everybody is really excited about this stuff.
Yeah.
what
No, I am too. I mean, they have to be there for years to come. So
Yep.
absolutely.
Maybe
All
we
right.
can display it in this new place.
Have a great night.
It's all
the
filled
weights
up.
are
Thank you so much.
Nobody asked.
Thanks for all your other work, too.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great week.
Good for you.
so,
Get my mouse.
the next project proposal that came in, remember when you were saying all those nice things about me, Jim, and how I keep everything running so smoothly and I'm on top of everything?
Sure, except for this one.
Except for this.
The hell are you thinking?
Here's what happened. I forgot to tell Jen Anderson that she needed to be at the meeting tonight. So I had thought that Kristen would be here. She never told me that she couldn't make the meeting as the Recreation Commission rep. So the Recreation Commission is not here to present this proposal tonight,
Yeah.
but there's nothing new in it from what you've seen in the past years regarding the purpose and the need for it.
Yes,
So I
that's
think,
true.
you know, I will obviously make certain that somebody is here in March, but this one is on me.
Do we have any idea of what the projected request would be?
No,
None?
not
Well,
yet.
You
It's
can't tell
coming.
me none.
Well, I'll
How many
explain.
how many zeros? does it
Approximately
have?
500,000.
How many
There is,
digits?
I think she has in the back.
She says
She
approximately
said approximately
500,000.
500,000.
Well, again, this is.
Less the 241?
No, I think that's in addition.
What about that?
So the visioning process that is going on now is to determine what the parcel is gonna be used for. Remember, past proposals were the park only, and then when the rec commission took on this project, they wanted to see what else could go on the same parcel, so that's why there's this visioning process. And, so the consultant is gonna help determine like the playground portion, how much that costs. And what other, maybe it's a pavilion, maybe it's a splash pad, maybe it's a walking trail, but maybe it's something we're not even thinking of yet. And those cost estimates will be added as it comes. So the consultant said that they could have cost estimates by the March meeting.
But the expectation is that the grant request will be on the order of $500,000?
We really, that's an estimate.
Is it closer to 500 than to 200?
Well, again, it depends on what portion of the project
Okay.
is funded. It could be that the first phase is for the pavilion and not for the actual.
Okay,
playground.
because if
No,
it's
really-
500, then we will have a situation where we have to make decisions as to what we do and what we postpone.
Okay.
Isn't this really premature, like right now?
Until someone can come up with a grant request number, it's
Well, the
premature.
deadline was.
I told her the deadline was
Right.
tonight. So they fulfilled the requirement of having a proposal to us by the deadline.
To the fall.
Okay,
Frankly, this is
All right.
not that. This doesn't really say what's involved in the super park. It doesn't say what's gonna be their splash pad, playground equipment, like specifically anything.
Right,
you know,
because it
and-
hasn't been determined yet.
Yeah, but that's, to me, that's not a proposal. That's a title. Frankly, and
They have
that's,
until next month to come up with that. That's the purpose of this meeting.
yeah, we'll give them
No.
till next month to come up
Yeah.
with that, but they need
To
to have
flush
a
it
number
out.
next
but
month.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
it means that though. If I'm incorrect here, feel free to correct me. But it means that at next month's meeting will be the first time we or anyone else will be able to see any full proposal, and then it's also the same meeting we have to vote on. Do we as a CPC want to put it forward to town meeting with the funds we have? I think that is, to my understanding of how this is supposed to work as a process, we should have a much more comprehensive plan even for now. It may not have to be everything, but something more than this. Like I'm in strong favor of the super park as a general idea. I just don't think this is enough for me to feel confident even today for having this on our.
Well, if there
That's
isn't,
my-
if we're not comfortable next month, then we can vote to postpone it.
Yeah, we could, why, is this time sensitive to you at all?
The time sensitivity comes from the construction of the extension of the library. And so we're trying to figure out, what components the public wants to see. And if those components require special, utilities like a water line or sewer line or electrical, so that that stuff can be taken care of before the parking lot is paved.
To say like what I remember hearing as well on this is that the parking lot won't be paved until at the earliest next spring / early spring next year. We also have the money that's already set aside and allocated for Super Park, and at the very it's very likely that at the very least we're going to need lighting, possibly water if we do a splash pad, and with that money, even without town voting on a CPC plan, we can run the conduit and even a water pipe that just ends under the parking lot space to
Right.
support that area without having the plan.
But we don't know if that money would be sufficient for that without going through this visioning process. It may be, but we don't know. So the timing of the request for CPC is that an application is due today. So it could be that come March 27th. It is, it's up, but we have to work within the guidelines that we're given. And so the time sensitivity is the paving of the parking lot. And, but no, the construction would not happen immediately.
So, what's the disadvantage, of being a little bit more information gathered and thinking about this with the October town meeting?
Yeah, I mean, that could, yeah, I mean, I don't think, except for losing again, if we had enough money to do the work from the monies we already have for the pipes, that could happen this summer. There may not be a disadvantage of going to October.
But if the lot's not paved until the spring of '21, it seems like you would still have time to put in.
Depending on the amount of work, and again, it's you gotta coordinate with with what they're doing.
Right.
So it's just kind of to get the project going.
I suggest we see what they bring next month. And if we don't like it, we can not like it.
Fair
If
enough.
we do,
There-
fine. If we think it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
If it isn't, it isn't.
I don't see a vote to have tonight on this anyway. You know,
We
at
don't
all,
vote.
you
We
know,
haven't voted on
for any-
anything.
No.
That's my point.
This
We're
is a
just
voting
discussing.
meeting.
That's my, it's no vote at all for tonight. But, so,
discussion.
it's gonna come back next month anyway, and we'll go from there. But
Yep.
it was just my overall, this isn't much to go on.
And you're right, it's not much of a,
Yeah.
it's missing a
valid
few key
point.
items.
Oh,
And whether or not you want to wear overalls is your own business.
What?
He said overalls, I don't.
Oh, I get it, overall, right now. Sorry, Don breaks over Marblehead.
Dawn breaks over Marblehead.
But
Okay,
But I do want to invite you all to the visiting session on Wednesday night, the 4th, the Great Hall.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yep, 6:30. So it's for the public to provide input to what they would like to see on that parcel.
We have small groups.
Listen, we'll get we will be happy with whoever shows up and provides input.
So, Mr. Chair,
C. Sorry, yes. I'm sorry.
that's all right. I'm just noticing there is people in the audience
Yeah,
still.
I was gonna say, there's nobody else on my list. So are there people here that came to speak for a specific purpose, or you're just here to?
Hang out?
Excited to be here.
Is it like an intellectual banquet?
They're starving out there.
That's a lot of pressure, you know.
Don, you don't have any?
Well, I just wanted to give an update if.
Yes,
Certainly.
Come on up.
On the cabinet?
we don't often get an update in person.
Well, I'm in
See,
charge of
Jim, I
this
can't
product,
make it
so
up to the front.
project, so I
I know.
I only have.
And it took you this long, though.
With proper motivation.
I'm old. The Weights and Measures cabinet went to the painters on Monday, was moved up. So he's probably gonna take a month to do that, then we'll bring it back here and reassemble the scale and everything into it. The couple of things I had, the moving expense was $419 one way. And, or 417. And it's gonna be 417 coming back, which is outrageous, but.
That's not gonna throw the project over, is it?
Oh, no, and we had built in contingency to it anyway, thanks to what you had given us. The one question I had for you was that we want to attribute CPC funding it. And we had talked informally about maybe putting a plaque or something inside the cabinet for permanent display. I want to know if you're okay with that, if you want something different, what does the wording need to say? Because I'm at the
Thanks,
point
Jim.
where I'm going to need to do something,
Thanks, Jim, for all you do.
all you've done,
Done.
because you're all done.
I think that's what we had talked about, is that if you could, something in there that, you know, with the cooperation of the Grafton Community Preservation Act, the Town of Grafton Community
It
Preservation
wouldn't be cooperation, it was funding.
funding.
All
I
of
think
funding
Joanne
came
could
from.
Funding
maybe work,
provided by, yeah.
Joanne, could you work with Don?
Yeah.
Like some examples?
I just, as long as you're okay with it,
I think
That's a great idea.
put Joanne on it. She'll come up with.
You do need the
she'll
credit.
find something.
Yeah, so a plaque will be good, and looks like Joanne will help you word it.
She'll probably make it.
Yeah, she'll.
A big wooden sign with granite posts
That's-
would probably be a little much, right?
With neon, with neon.
But if you do, Ken will be there and tell him where to put the posts. Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don.
Okay. And nobody else needs to speak? Okay. So we'll jump back to the clerk's report.
Oh, goodness.
So John has given me his,
My notes.
which, is it of anything of
Some of
substance,
it-
or is it all?
Some of them were like a word was left out, or I
Yeah.
was questioning the word that was used.
Okay.
What are all the numbers up?
I do that so that if somebody
You
doesn't,
make a comment.
Oh,
you know, if they have a comment, they can say
whatever.
line, right.
Ah,
Instead of
okay.
saying the fourth
Makes it
paragraph,
easier
the
to-
third line in the
I
fourth
knew there was a
paragraph,
method to
yeah.
your
I
madness.
I only noticed one thing. I don't know if that was incorporated ahead of me.
On
getting
what
this printed out.
line did you notice
Line
it?
49.
Line 49. Placed a moratorium on complete.
Placed a moratorium on completed
Oh, John's.
plans. John's.
Yeah, he's got that circled, I know.
Okay.
I got that, thanks.
That was the only one I caught offhand.
Yeah, okay. Well, John's got a lot, so I'm guessing.
That's
I move
time
we-
on his
Grammar.
hands.
Is it editorial or is
Second.
it?
No, it's all
That's amended
grammar.
by John.
I have to
Has it-
deal with
yeah,
it too
no
on
comma
historical.
or capital.
So we have a motion to amend the amendment,
Yeah.
to accept the minutes as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
I just lost it.
Gotcha.
Stole it, stole
They
it.
stole it. I said it first.
So do we have a motion to?
Yes.
approve
Yes,
it?
and a second.
And a second. All those, sorry, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Treasurer's report.
Okay, you all have a copy. So this is a near final report for fiscal 2020. And we're going to be doing a couple things a little different from now on, based on what Stuart had recommended. One of them is that in the May special town meeting, where it shows in light blue there, corrections to the reserve estimates. He said we don't need to do that.
But this year, do we need to do it since?
No, we don't need to do it this year. We never needed to do it.
Well, that this isn't de minimis. This is a huge chunk.
Well, he actually described to us what de minimis meant, and
Well, $40,000, I would not say
Yeah.
is de minimis.
he said that, we said, well, what about this year? And he said, no, not even this year.
That's right, he did.
Did he?
He said, not
Yeah.
even this year.
He said it wasn't even, yeah, he was talking something over 50,
Okay.
right? And this isn't.
Yeah, it's not that much. It's not, it's over 50 in aggregate, but not for each one.
Okay.
So what's different on this report is that it has the actual fiscal 2020 state match. It's $108,000, which was roughly twice what we had been carrying in there as an estimate. That's good news. We were saying back in the beginning it
We
could
need you
be,
to do those line numbers.
it's the second line on the first, on the
It's
page.
almost 24%.
He's already spoiled.
Awesome.
It's the 24% number.
I can count them
So
too.
we were guessing it might be $50,000 above what we had said, and that's what it turned out to be, just by chance. So
Ken, do you
that
think
adds
that's
50.
like a one-time thing, or do you think every year they'll?
Every year it's going to be a little higher than it was.
Oh,
If you just take a look while we're talking about this on the second page.
All that lobbying making it work.
Second page is a yearly chart of what our surcharge revenue and the state match and interest have been, also the percent on the right-hand scale. And so you can see that we had an uptick in percentage this year from last year on the state match, and the state match being in the green.
So you don't have 2021. So. you
Well,
don't-
2021 isn't here yet.
Okay. No, but the 50,
The,
the 24, never mind. Got
that
it.
was the match on the
Yeah.
2019 surcharge
I got it.
revenue match occurring in 2020.
Got it.
And that's the green, the rightmost green bar. So that's what it's been historically.
But, can I interrupt with something quick?
Yes.
One of the things that I think a lot of people, especially folks in town, and I've seen some things on social media that have been inaccurate. There have been changes to the act, as we all know, and Stuart pointed out. They passed the legislation that has resulted in the fee structure at the Registry of Deeds has gone up. So we're going to start to see an increase in the state match going forward because the fees are going up. I think they've doubled, didn't they? They went from like $10 to
it was
$25
substantial.
in most cases. Now, all of that it depends upon how many people buy homes and what's going on in the economy. The big jump that we're seeing this year was the $20 million from the state surplus that was given to the fund. And that was due to legislation that was enacted by Deval Patrick when he was governor that put the CPA trust fund in line for any surplus state funds.
So those surpluses, those increases are big, but there's so many more towns and so much
Right.
that are doing it now that you can see that it didn't make a huge difference in the percentage.
Right. That's where the problem is, as more towns come on, and the fact that we never went to 3%. If we were at 3%, we'd get 100% state match.
And so I don't expect that we're going to be, above 30% next year.
No,
I
but
wouldn't
it's
be
better than the
surprised.
11 that we
Yeah.
were.
Better than 11, but if it stays, if it's in the 20 to 25% range next year is kind of what we should expect. And
And
we
the-
won't know until later in the year.
Right, and the infusion of surplus money is never a given.
Right, and so far it's only kept it, from being even lower.
Right.
So, that's the surcharge news. So as you go down here, we still have $130,000 in the, what we now call the fiscal 2020 budgeted reserve. And undesignated funds are down to $140,000, given what we've granted, what we've had and what we granted. You can see the big grants was, the Grafton Common was a big one. Money well spent. And then in the reserves, in the, there's not very much money in any of the reserves, because we try to keep that, we try to use that. So the bottom line is the 335,000 is the, all our funds for all of the purposes
In fiscal year 20.
at the end of fiscal 2020. So, we haven't got the 2021 projection yet, but I just, did a, thumbnail sketch of it. And I expect the revenue and the revenue line to be about where it says 592 here. I'm projecting a little lower than that because I'm projecting a lower state match. And I'm just saying, just for estimates, $550,000. And then we subtract from that the administration reserve and the two bond payments. And that's going to take us, and then the 30% for the reserves. So that the line at the bottom of the first block where it says budgeted reserve, that's going to be about $216,000 after we take away all the stuff we know is coming. And the undesignated fund next year, I think, is going to end at about 266,000. So what that means is that the amount of money we have to spend for any non-reserve purposes is going to be about $480,000. That's the number, 480. And so,
For 20, yeah.
yes, for 2021. And so, what we've seen, the grant visibility we have is the Lions Club paving is 134 or 140, which is half of it. And that leaves, excuse me, not half of it.
No,
Yeah,
not
that
third
leaves,
of it.
that leaves about, 240 left.
340.
I wouldn't use, I would do a lot of rounding, for this analysis.
Well, it's,
Say it would be about,
around.
yeah, it would be about 340. And so that's about how much is left for, in the bank totally. And so if the Superfund wants, if Super Park wants 500, we haven't got it.
Okay.
Ken, can I ask a quick question? When you talk about taking that revenue number and you've taken out the bond payments and the reserves, have you taken, like, part of the bond payment for Pell Farm can come out of the open space reserve?
It could, but there isn't enough money in it to cover it.
So we're covering the entire, when you talk about what you've taken out of that revenue number, You're taking out the entire bond payment as well as the entire reserve.
Both bond payments.
Both
and the
bond
reserve-
payments and
all
both
three
reserves.
And all four reserves.
Okay, because the other bond payment could come from historical.
And one could come from historical, and the other one would also come from open space.
So if those reserves are about 50,000, say, there is the potential that there's another 100,000.
Well, the two reserves, for taking the point in time, the two reserves add up to about $68,000 in addition to what I said.
Usually about
Didn't-
400,000.
Stuart say that we should deplete these, so
Yes,
that
and we do.
And we
even
do.
if there's only 38,000, we use 38,000 to pay the bond, and then the balance 42, so
Yeah.
that it's, you use two
From
pieces,
undesignated, yeah.
Yeah,
and then you clear it out every year.
We don't need to zero it out. It's not that important because we're not running that close to the bottom of the tank to need to do that. But we have always taken the reserves first,
And I would
like he recommended. We've always
try
tried
to clear them out.
it. We don't try to zero them out because it's not that important to do that. But we keep them, but they're low, and we keep them low.
Okay.
But they will have
And
they will have
recreation-
53
yeah,
added to them in fiscal year 21.
That's right. That's right.
So the
The,
open space will be around 100 and
It will, but the-
historical will be around 67.
But both these big projects that we're talking about are recreation and not included in the reserves.
No, but for the bond payments.
Oh, the bond payments, yeah. It's right, so we could jigger,
Basically, you're,
$70,000
I mean,
more.
we're putting you on the spot because you've done all of this as an estimate while the meeting's been going on, right? So, but basically, if, you know, your estimate is very conservative.
Yes.
Okay.
It's conservative in, primarily in the state match estimate.
I know you and Joanne were talking about the reserves, and that Stuart had recommended that they get moved to the spring.
Yes,
What's-
that's a recommendation, and we have been discussing that.
Okay, because I
We could
think I
move
heard
it.
you say that if we do that, then the money's not available.
No, the money still is available because we can take it out from revenue before well, we could take it out from revenues. So the new reserve money is available.
Because we need to discuss that and make a decision on
Yeah.
that. Are we gonna do that, or are we not?
Yeah, personally, I've kind of been trying to go judge the benefits and the pluses and minuses of it, and they're pretty even. So the only question is, the downside is that if we do it in the spring, then the estimates are looser than they would be if we did them in October.
But since we're not truing them up anymore, it does not matter.
That's true. And so it really could go either way. And so, we
Since
just need
we're
to
the
make up our minds by
only-
next month.
City or town in the state that does it this way.
It might be a good thing to cover under the plan.
Yeah,
Might,
keep it as
might
it
be a
is until the
policy issue
plan.
to
Yeah.
talk to her about because she may
Good idea.
know best practices and have a sense of what's worked and hasn't worked for, right?
My other
So-
question, I'm sorry, Ken.
Anyway, so I guess if you ask me right now.
So just
I
leave
would-
it the way
I
it is
could-
right now?
If you ask me right now, I'd say, let's do it in the spring.
So you're saying go ahead and do it?
Yeah, we could do it in the spring.
You know, the other thing that we gloss right over is that we're over halfway on the Pell Farm bond.
I know.
Yeah, we are.
Isn't that amazing?
It's awesome.
Actually, the third sheet in your package there is the timing of when we do what in the finances part. And we've always done the bond payments at the annual town meeting in the spring. And we've done the budgeted reserves and we've done all the reserves in the semi-annual. We're talking about moving that up one. And then the reserve adjustments, we're talking about not doing them at all. Well, we aren't going to do them at all. And the affordable housing transfer, we always do at the spring special. Because we don't know what it is before then. So, This time we're in 2021, you can see where it's suggesting that we do the budgeted reserve and the three purpose reserves in the spring annual town meeting. So that's the report.
Okay, thank you. Does everybody understand that that Ken is proposing that we move this from?
Do we need a vote?
I just want to make sure everybody's,
No, we're just gonna come up with the warrants, we'll vote on them. We'll vote on the warrants when they're.
is everybody on the same page of understanding that that's what we're gonna do?
We're,
It's really, it's not going to have any material difference on anything
But
we
we're
do.
just moving it to May.
so you do want to move the reserves to May?
I think so, yeah. I changed my
Get her
mind.
up off the
changed your
floor.
mind.
Maybe it'll be different next month. By the time they
Right
might
after I
change it
read all
back.
the warrants.
I think it's unidirectional.
Now that she's typed it all up.
Will
Okay,
you
thank
get me dollar amounts, or do you want me to go to Anita? How do you want to do that?
I'll go and get them,
From Anita? Okay,
yeah, I'll get them next week.
all right.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I had one more question.
Yep.
So, the estimated fiscal year 21, a total of, or you're estimating around 480, that includes the leftover funds from 2020?
Yeah, it does, and that would be this number right here.
it doesn't include the 80 that they're gonna turn back either.
Yeah, it doesn't, but that's not gonna be material.
Well,
That's not going to be bigger than the estimate, than the error in the estimates I've made.
that's almost half of what they're requesting, this, so it's.
Who's
like-
that, of these guys? Oh, that about 20,000?
No, if they're requesting
No, they did request, they had like 40,000, right?
140 and they're giving us back 80,
Oh, no,
means-
that's,
No,
that's,
they-
that's
they
out,
paid
that's in the
41.
future, that's in the future,
Okay.
that's well into the future.
Yeah.
That
Unless
would
we have
be
any
after
other
they finish
projects
the
sunsetting.
project. So,
okay. Okay, do you have a motion to accept?
I will
moved.
make second.
A motion,
No, I just asked if we needed a vote on that, and you said no.
Snooze
we're
you lose.
talking about the treasurer's report.
Well, I could have been part of that,
too late.
You can't win them all, Jim.
Jim, there's still the adjournment coming up. You can have that one.
Jen
The
always
most
is
important
too
one.
quick.
So, seeing that there is no relevant discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We are at the point of project updates. It's 9:00. I know you guys
Keep it
want to go
short
home,
and sweet.
so if
I'll
you
keep
have
it short and
quick
sweet.
update.
Open Space and Recreation Plan. It is at, CMRCP also had some turnover as Joe was leaving. They also were having some turnover, but now all of that, they are finishing up.
Okay.
It's at CMRCP, who is the consultant doing the plan. They are finalizing it, and
So are you overseeing it now?
I thought I was.
Yeah, well, after Joe left.
Oh, no, Jen Anderson is really taking the lead.
Oh.
I mean, I'm on the committee, but she's the staff member that's really pushing it.
How do you think it's coming out?
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's never perfect, right? You
No.
read it and things, you're like, oh, we should have
About
done
this?
this.
Yeah, okay.
But, again, plans are supposed to be a working document, you're supposed to update them more often than we do, and but I think Jen is really, she really wants to get it done. She's really motivated because, it does provide the opportunity to apply for grants. And so, there's some grant applications coming due, so
Hopefully the timing will work.
the
for her.
timing, she really needs it done so that, she can use it as a support and.
Does she
some
have the
grant.
wherewithal to put the screws in on CMRPC
Oh,
to
yeah,
get
oh, yeah.
it done?
Yeah, yep.
Because this impacts her.
Listen, she's been doing a ton lately.
No, but I mean, like, does she need backup to say, this has got to get done?
No, I think she's
She's doing it, okay.
yeah, she's doing it. She's doing a good job.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We just heard from the Community Preservation Act plan. Institute Woods. Joanne, any updates on that?
No, I'm gonna meet with Chris about it in the coming days.
Okay.
Was
He's been
ever
so
an
strong.
RFP even sent out for that one?
Oh, yeah, the RFP went
Oh,
out, and
okay.
they've
It's
done
almost
some
done, I
work.
think.
We've
supposed to
actually
be- Oh, okay.
paid them some
Yeah,
money.
it's
Oh,
supposed to
okay.
be almost done.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
close to done. It's just something that he hasn't,
It's kind of fell between the cracks with
with Joe leaving, and he's been here 2 weeks, and this
Yeah.
was not the number one thing on his plate to learn about.
Okay. Records we've discussed. Gravestones, no update. Common restoration.
So, we're still waiting on the engineering plans. There's been some delays, from the vendor, I guess, or contractor. So we, feel at this point that there is no possibility to move forward with the actual construction this year. It was a tight window anyways, in order to, limit any damage to the trees when you do the excavation. You need to use an air spade and do that prior to the growing season. So you would have had to have started the actual excavation work probably in late March. To go out to bid is a whole process to do an RFP. It takes typically 6 to 8 weeks to do that. If there are any trees that are identified as being compromised and potentially having to remove some of them, there would be a public hearing process for that. Long and short, there was no way we were going to be able to get the whole RFP done in time and get the wheels moving on the project. So what we're doing instead is moving forward with what we can do now this year. So the first thing, and we just had the contract signed, is with a arborist to do the evaluation on the trees. They will overlay that, the tree preservation plan, overlay it on top of the engineering plans. So they need those engineering plans to do that work too. And they can do that in a couple days. There will be some air spading involved in that. We want to get that done before the common gets busy with events going on. And so events will be held on the common again this year. They'll be able to take place. We will work around that. The other thing that we can work on is putting together the actual RFP. Been working closely with Andy DeShane and Becca, the assistant town administrator. And we'll put that together once we have the engineering plans and can do that. So in January of next year, we can hit the ground running. The other piece of it is if the tree preservation plan does identify trees that need to be removed, the town will be able to do that before next spring. So
Minus two.
And to clarify things, because I know some trees fell down in the common, those
Was that last night that happened?
Today.
it was today. I think it was this morning.
with all the
There was
Oh,
some.
the wind?
The ground's very wet. There was wind.
And that was rotten. You could
The
see.
big tree was rotted, and that's not a tree that was the town had, prior to this whole project going, the town had identified trees that they were concerned with. This was not one of those trees, and when it came down, it ripped off the branches on the Christmas tree evergreen that we have there on the
Were the
common.
lights still on it?
I don't know that. They might have
Not
been.
now.
They could have been. They weren't strung very nicely
Yeah,
this year, I
we
would say.
decided we didn't like the way they were just striped. Yeah.
But unfortunately,
worry
when
about
it came
that.
down, it took down a lot of the branches on one side of that tree, so that tree had to come down as well. And if you know, it's the big tree that was really close to the bandstand, and your shirt says gazebo. How can you wear that?
That's right.
It's from recreation. I didn't. It's a gazebo road.
How
ride.
could you wear
You
that?
correct me all the time if I say gazebo, so I just bring it up. At any rate, it was that really pretty tree that was right next to the
Couldn't
bandstand.
we had a Charlie Brown Christmas tree and they left?
So part of the project not only was putting in the walkways and the lighting and all, but also coming up with a plan for the trees and planting of trees as well. So we will be planting trees. There is money in the budget to do that, and we will be doing that. So not to say that the town may not take it on their own to replace the trees that came down today sooner. They very well may.
They probably shouldn't until there's a plan is in place.
Yeah.
Because
Paul Cornier is very much in, he's the tree warden as well as his other duties in town, so he's on the project
The list
committee
of
too.
open
so he's
projects, the Nipmuc got left off unless I'm missing it.
Cisco
Cisco
Home-
Just
Homestead.
Cisco Homestead.
It's the last
Last
one.
one.
Oh, he's on the spreadsheet.
And I'm,
Oh, it's not on there again?
is it not?
Creepers, creepers.
Oh,
It's off again?
it is off again.
That's like my Achilles heel. You know, you have that thing in life that you keep screwing
I do
up?
have a brief update from her.
That's why it's like,
Um,
I knew that you
Yeah.
talked to her and I'm just like,
No, well, it's a
project's
big project. It's very
wanna do it
visible.
right.
We want to make
Yeah.
sure it's done right. It does not make sense to try and rush something through. We want it to look
Once
beautiful.
the construction starts, like the work, how long of a window do you anticipate?
We don't fully know until we have a contractor on board, but we would hope within like a 2 months period once the construction starts. There are pieces that we may be able to get going on separately too, and that's something else we have to discuss, like the archway lights. Those have to be custom made. That's not something you can buy off, so we could potentially have that work done separately ahead of the time.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Cisco.
All right, so Ray has, of course, met with the architects to go over measurements at the homestead, and they're planning for interior photos. They're going to be scheduling a session in late March or early April to do those photos, and they also it will require some planning for a storage unit to remove the material from the interior of the house and labor to move and then replace all that material. They're in the planning phases right now. And when she has photos to share, she's gonna put them in a Google Drive for me to be able to share with the committee.
Oh, great. You know what's so funny? I think I just didn't do the print area on this right, because I remember writing all of it in there. Yeah, I'll get it to you, sorry.
A likely story.
Try again.
Try again. Fine.
Thank you. Any other items not reasonably anticipated?
I'd like to vote for executive session. No, really, never mind, no one's really dressed for it. Motion to adjourn?
May I just say one thing? I just, sorry, sorry, Jim.
We can discuss the motion.
My
you
only,
can't.
my only comment is I loved Peter's idea about having us speak at, not Peter, Paul, sorry, losing my mind today, but I love, ahead of the CPC projects at this town meeting. I think it would be good to have sometime before town meeting, a draft of what you may be saying up there that we can vote on as a committee, so it can be the committee's voice.
We actually had something that we drafted a few
We
years
usually
back
just
that
have,
we
it's a
could let-
flyer that we
If there's
hand
an
out.
existing draft or something that, that's fine by me. I just think that
We
it
have
would
a-
be
Did you
send that
wonderful
around?
to.
A flyer.
Yeah, we'll
So
have
the
Joanne
idea
send it
wouldn't,
around.
the idea wouldn't be to talk about the
Speak.
specific projects, it's just
No,
to talk about the funding in general.
Yeah, like just, the idea is to just reiterate where this money's coming from and, what it's actually, appropriate for in that. So and I definitely support
I
us
agree.
doing that.
Okay, so that's on your,
I'll send around the flyer that we have. Why don't I maybe extract from that a few bullet points that you could stand up and say?
oh, so you're saying you do want
I don't know, do you want, I had the sense you did, but maybe you don't, you just want the flyer?
No, I think it would be good to speak to it.
Oh, I do too.
Bullet points,
I
but the
think it
flyer
makes
is
sense
definitely good
to
too.
speak to it, and I think it makes sense for you as chair to be the one to do it. and
Absolutely.
With the support of the board.
This is a
of the
chair.
You can bring the chair
Chairman.
with you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
second to
So
Jim's
we have a
motion.
motion and a second. All
I
those
could
in
have taken your
favor?
motion and I didn't.
We're adjourned at 9:18.